Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Look, I'm really excited. I appreciate you spending some time with me today, taking time out of your busy schedule just to hang out with me today. So thank you for joining me. And hey, if you haven't subscribed to the channel already, I'd love for you to hit the subscribe button, turn on the bell so that you'll get notifications just as soon as I drop a new video on YouTube. So, last week my family and I, we went on a really nice vacation. We took about a week and pretty much didn't do anything but just sit and hang out on the beach. And I've got two little girls, and it was their first time seeing the ocean. And we rode boogie boards and we built sand castles, and felt like we probably went through about 5 gallons of sunscreen while we were there. And I know what you're probably thinking. It sure doesn't look like this guy just spent a whole week at the beach. And I know. I what can I say? I don't tan, but it was super nice to get away for a little while, to hang out with family and friends, and really to just relax for a little while. But you know what I kept finding myself doing while I was sitting on the beach, while I was supposed to be relaxing? I found myself, I kept thinking of all the things that weren't getting done back home. I was thinking about, bills that needed to be paid, and thinking about things at work and at church, and all the stuff that would need to get done as soon as we got back. And it felt like pretty soon that this relaxing vacation, all of a sudden it didn't really feel all that relaxing anymore. And in fact, I was beginning to get some anxiety about it all. And then I realized, the whole point of a vacation is to just get away from everything for a little bit. But why is that so hard to do? Why can't we just turn it all off for like a week and relax and just enjoy ourselves, have some fun? And I've got a couple of ideas on what some of the problems are that give us anxiety, even when we're on vacation, and what we can do to help bring some relief from it all. Anxiety and stress, we pretty much all deal with them on a daily basis, right? And it's no secret that as a society, we're stressed out, and our anxiety levels, they're usually maxed out. And I read an interesting article a couple of days ago from Time magazine that said that nearly 40% of Americans reported being more anxious than they were just a year ago. And at first glance, that really didn't surprise me. It probably doesn't surprise you either. But as I thought more about that statistic, it dawned on me that it means that for nearly half of Americans, 40%, not only are they stressed out and anxious, but it's not getting any better. In fact, it's getting worse. And I believe that we can't live the kind of momentous life that God has planned for us if we are constantly stressed out and anxious and worried. A couple of videos ago, I told you that I believe our guide to leading a momentous life, meaning the life that God wants us to lead, can be found in this book right here. And so I wondered, does it have anything to say about stress and anxiety? Well, actually, it's got a lot to say about those two things. But before we look at what the Bible has to say about our stress and our anxiety, let's talk about some of the ways that anxiety can creep into our lives and keep us from living the kind of life that God wants us to live, a truly momentous life. First off, let's talk for a couple of minutes about our phones. Our phones have become such a major part of our everyday lives that it's one of those things, it's hard to imagine life before our phones. I mean, everybody, even down to our kids, everybody has a phone. And everybody seems like is on it all the time, and they're great. I mean, instantly we have access to just about everything. You want to take a picture, you want to take a video. I took a ton of them at the beach last week. You want to look up the actor who's in your favorite Netflix show. You can do just about anything you want with this right here. And that anything you want part really is for better or for worse, because for just as many good things as there are about our phones, it seems like there are just about as many bad and negative things about them too. And one of the great parts about vacation, especially a beach vacation that's meant to relax and just to hang out, at least for me, is having some time to relax and to play some games on my phone, watch some shows on Netflix, or watch some videos on YouTube to figure out what's happening out in people's lives on all the different social media platforms. And one of the problems with all of that is during all of it, I kept getting texts and emails, and really my anxiety levels started to rise because I'm on vacation. So do I respond to these messages? Can they wait? Well, no, they probably can't wait. And then it became easy to slip back into work mode. And I think in our society, whether we're on vacation or not, it's easy, especially because of our phones, to not be able to leave work at work. We always have calls to take, and we've got emails to answer and texts to respond to, and really it just seems like it never stops, right? And while things like texts and email and messages make life a lot easier at times, sometimes they cause us to miss out on what's going on all around us. And in a lot of ways, because of our phones, we're missing out on everything that's going on around us. We're missing out on being present and being active and being engaged with our kids and our spouses, our families and our friends. And really, we're missing out on being present, active, and engaged with God. And there is no way that we can live a momentous life when that's the case. Instead, we're getting stressed out by all the emails and the constant reminders of what we have to get done, and the anxiety that Facebook or Instagram or Twitter brings when it seems like everybody else is living the perfect life with their perfect pictures, their perfect families, and the hundreds of likes every time they post something. And on top of that, when you throw in stress and anxiety that comes from money, from financial issues, when things in our lives go wrong unexpectedly, when we get a bad report from the doctor, when our kids and they're not doing good in school or they're being bullied, it's easy to see why nearly half of us could easily report that we feel more stressed and anxious than we did just a year ago. So what's the answer? That's the big question. What's the answer? Is there an answer even? Well, the thing is, I don't think there's a quick answer. I don't think there's an easy fix kind of an answer either. But I do think that there are some answers right here in this book, in our guide to living a momentous life. So let's see what it says. In Matthew chapter 6, Jesus himself tells us to not be anxious about our lives, to not worry about what we're going to eat and drink, to not worry about tomorrow. And he reminds us that if God, if he takes care and provides for even the birds, how much more is he going to take care of and provide for us, for those that he loved, for his creation. And in 1 Peter 5, we're told to cast or to throw all of our anxiety, our stress, and our worries onto God because he cares for us. And then in Philippians chapter 4, it's a well-known passage. It tells us not to be anxious about anything, but in everything, by prayer and by supplication and with thanksgiving, to let your requests be known to God. So there you go. It's that simple, right? Now, at least to me, it doesn't feel that simple. Because, I've heard sermons. I've been a part of small group studies that focus on stress and anxiety. And they typically seem to talk about a lot of these scriptures. And it's easy to try to cast our cares and our worries onto God, but I have some news for you. The things that are stressing you out and bringing you all of that anxiety, they're not going to magically just disappear after you've read and even after you've claimed these scriptures. And I think that's the hard part about it. We can read these scriptures, we can believe them, but we're still going to have to deal with our problems if we're ever going to move past all of the stress and the anxiety and the worry that we deal with. So, how do we do that? How do we do that? First off, I think it's a process. Like I said, there isn't a quick fix, but there are some things that we can do to get rid of some stress, maybe even quickly. It may not fix everything, but there are a couple things that I think we can do. And I think the easiest way to get rid of some stress is to limit your time on this and on your phone. And I know you're thinking that there's no way that you can do that. You're thinking that I don't have any idea how much stuff you get done on your phone. Maybe how even important it is for your job. Well, if your first reaction to me telling you to limit your time on your phone is that you can't do that, then the hard news is you probably need to stop and evaluate why you feel like that. Honestly, it could be that you're addicted to your phone. I think a lot of us are. If that's the case, if we're addicted to social media, to games, to whatever, then we really need to limit our time on our phones and to get away from it and to get back to our real lives, to be engaged and present in them. It could also be that you feel like you can't because of your job. You need to be available to take calls and take texts and to answer emails. Well, the hard news here is that you maybe need to evaluate just how important that job is. Because if it's affecting your life, if you're missing out on all the important stuff going on around you, if you're stressed and you're anxious, honestly, it might be time to switch up your job. And I know we all have to work. We've all got bills to pay, but it might just be worth considering a job change and really a lifestyle change if your job is bringing on too much stress and too much anxiety. So those are some things that we can look at that can make some immediate changes. And in addition to those, I think it's key to realize and to accept that we're always going to face problems in our lives. That's why we're dealing with stress and anxiety, that it's a process. Because we're always going to have it. So if you're stressed out about your finances, you can't really say that you're going to give that anxiety and that worry over to God and then expect all of your bills, the pile that you have, to just disappear, because it doesn't work that way. Why doesn't it work that way? Because it's a process. So what is this process? First off, I think we really have to take those three scriptures that I mentioned earlier and really combine them to match them up together. We have to believe that what Jesus said is actually true, that we're not supposed to worry because God will take care of us and He will provide for us, which leads us, I think, to the first step in the process. We need to do what Peter tells us to do, to cast our anxiety onto God. I think it's important that you acknowledge that you're giving it to God. That needs to be very real in your mind, because when you do that, you're doing something important. You're saying to yourself and to God that you don't have it within you to fix everything that's bringing you stress and worry and anxiety. So you're giving it over to the one who can help. You're taking it out of your own hands and you're handing it over to God. And I think it's important that you get that mental picture, whatever that might be, in your head, of literally doing that, of handing your anxiety over to God. And that you keep that picture, that image, at the forefront of your mind while you're making a conscious effort to change how you deal with your stress and your anxiety. And then the next step in the process is to do what Paul tells us in Philippians. We're to simply pray. We're to let our requests be known to God. And when I'm feeling stressed about a situation and I know I need to pray about it, one of the things I like to do is I like to pretend that God doesn't have any idea of what's going on. He has no idea about it. And so I tell Him every detail. I tell Him everything that worries me and concerns me and why I'm stressed about it. And it's amazing, while it doesn't necessarily fix everything, it's amazing how much better I feel about it. And so it's not a magic fix to the situation. So we need to make a commitment to pray about it consistently, to ask God for wisdom and guidance, and to seek out what we're supposed to learn through the process. Because if we believe that it is in fact a process, then we have to believe and to be okay with knowing that it might take time. And really the only way that we can be okay with that is to keep that mental picture of us constantly handing it off to God, knowing that we're not going to try to fix it on our own, in our own ways and our own means, but instead that we believe that God is working. And so that means that we've got to take Jesus at his word, that God provides for the birds and that he is exceedingly and abundantly going to provide for you. So the next step in the process is to believe that God is working it all together for our good. In that verse in Peter where he tells us to cast our cares onto God, he says we're supposed to do that because God cares for us. He's interested in you and what you're going through. He genuinely cares. And we're told in Romans 8 that in all things, God works for the good of those who love him. You see, when we learn and accept that it's a process, when we consciously give it over to God, when we commit the situation to consistent prayer, when we ask for wisdom and guidance, when we believe that God is in control and that he's working everything together for our good, then I think our outlook on the situation shifts from one that brings stress and anxiety and despair to one that brings hope and ultimately an outlook that brings peace about the situation. Because that's how Paul ends that verse in Philippians 4. That after we commit our cares and our concerns to God in prayer, that the peace of God, which transcends all understanding, it will guard our hearts and our minds in Jesus. And that's where all of our stress and our anxiety, where they all reside, where they take home, is in our hearts and in our minds. You know, it's easy as we go through these things to let them weigh on us, for our hearts to be heavy, for our minds to go 100 miles an hour because we don't know how we're going to pay the next bill. We don't know how we're going to handle the bad doctor's report that we received. We don't know what tomorrow holds. But the good news is we don't have to worry about that because we have a God who cares about us, who's providing for us, and who's going ahead and already making provisions. So my challenge to you, if you want to lead a momentous life, one that serves God and one that is not full of anxiety and stress, then my challenge to you is to give it over to him this week, to pray about it, and to believe that he is working it all together for your good.